Hello and welcome to the bonus show number 5. This is going to be a little bit different because Rich is not going to be joining me for this show. It's completely my fault. I reached out to him too late and not given enough notice to actually get on a meeting with me. Things have been quite busy for, I'm sure, both of us, but I can only speak for myself really. So I've been incredibly busy for the last few weeks at least. And one with interviews, I've been really trying to get as many interviews recorded as possible. There's an amazing guest list for season 5, so I'm looking forward to sharing that with you. But also just life stuff, things just sadly happening just to make things difficult. So that's been slowing me down a little bit, which means that we are in the position we're in, where it's just you and I for this bonus show. Now, I was asked by Ralph whether I'd be interested in covering him whilst he's on holiday for 4 days in the gallery. And I'd love to. So I said, yep, absolutely. And I'm very familiar with the gallery, as you know. I worked there for a long time filming. But this is the first time that I spend time in the gallery welcoming guests. And part of my preparation, I thought I would film some videos promoting the fact that I'm going to be there, to see if anyone's in the area and able to pop by to come and say hello. But otherwise, I directed them to the website, which is welshart.net. That's where Finnepark has a website full of its artists' work for sale to show you what's available, tell you about which shows on and what shows are coming up. So that's what I was there to do, is to greet people. The show that was on whilst I was there was downstairs, so on the ground floor, there was Matthew Wood. Matthew Wood's a fantastic artist. He's the first artist who I met at Finnepark. He also had some work on the first floor in a specific room where it was his landscape work. The majority of the first floor was another artist called Anna Davies. And I got to know her better from behind the camera, really, because I got to see her talking to Ralph about who she is, how she makes her work and what it's like. And her work was amazing as well. I really find her work fascinating. When I first saw it, I found it really strange but curious. It didn't put me off. It wasn't something which I didn't like. Hers is beautiful work. It's just different. It's very stylized, very personal to her. Because it was all of her paintings together, they kind of spoke to each other and related to each other in a way which just gave it this reality and this community. So yeah, that was my few days working at Finnepark. It was really nice. There were quite a few sales, not loads, but there were some online sales, some in-person sales. And my brother and my mum popped in to say hello as well and have a walk around, which is nice. So that was my experience working there. It's a real privilege. But now I want to talk to you about some art making that I've been doing recently. There have been several trips of plein air painting that I've been doing. Now for patrons, you will have already seen the video I put up recently of Bluebell Wood. Now there is a second painting that I did there that I mentioned in the video. If you're interested, let me know and I will share that. And what I thought I would do instead is to talk about that here on the bonus show, and just to show little snippets of it. Because Bluebell Wood is an incredible location, and I'll show up snippets of my first painting there this year. This is the video that went up on Patreon. So if you're interested, the full video is up on Patreon, just like the full bonus show, the full 1 hour, goes up every month on Patreon as well. All Patreon supporters are greatly appreciated, and you are the ones who keep this channel alive. So what I'm going to do is show little snippets for the public viewers, the non-patrons. I appreciate you watching, and any likes and comments are greatly appreciated as well. The first painting I did this year at Bluebell Woods was with a friend of mine. And she sat behind me. She'd picked a spot to paint, so I looked the other direction. I thought that'll be nice. I made a couple of mistakes. I talk about this in the video I've made for patrons. First is that the paints I'm using are quite old, so they're dry, really dried out. They need mixing with linseed oil, and I haven't been doing that. So the next time I go out plein air painting, I'm going to take a little jar of linseed oil just to wetten up the palette, to mix the paints better. Mistake number 2 was that I've done this a few times as well. I set up my canvas, my pochade box, looking at this scene, but the sun is coming directly at me. Some people say not to do that, and I appreciate why. It can be very difficult and challenging, but I've seen people do it well. The mistake, however, is that I have my canvas here and the sun's here, so there's light coming through the canvas, which makes it really difficult for me to paint on there and to see a clear representation of the tones and the colours that I'm working with. What I should do is move it like that, so that the sun's coming this way, it's not hitting directly on the back, or like that, and paint like this. Paint on the canvas, look at the scene. I didn't do that. So that was mistakes that I made on my first painting at Bluebell Woods this year. Now, not long after, it may have only been 2 days after, I'm not sure, I went back to Bluebell Woods. So I painted a lot faster. And I did have some larger brushes. It was a bit messy, a bit sloppy, and comparing it to the first painting shows that it has potential, but it's not as good a composition, it's not as strong. It needs a lot of work to pull it out into something really powerful that I was experiencing in the moment. But that's the benefit of plein air painting for me, is that it's always a bit of a battle, and it's always yielding results, whether it's success or failure. So that's why I feel as though doing plein air painting frequently is giving me this benefit of development and introspection that is otherwise lacking from my process. Studio work is also important, and I've been trying to do the odd piece with a bit of a different approach. I'll talk about that another day, and I'll try to show examples, but for now that has been my recent 2 attempts from painting at Bluebell Woods. If you're interested to see the whole process of the first painting, then check out our Patreon channel. It's linked in the description below. Recently I was asked to review a book by Gita Joshi. Gita was a guest on season 3 of the podcast, and she had sent me her book, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a fantastic read. In fact, I've got several quotes written down that I would like to read for you. So there are certain parts of the book which spoke to me and I experienced it and I can relate. There are other parts of the book which I really wasn't aware of, and I'm keen to actually work on and practice myself. So here's a few quotes. From a chapter called The Mind's Eye and Art. Why do 2 people see the same painting so differently? This may seem obvious, but I've been into galleries with people and found it strange how some people just can't engage with a painting. And I find it an incredibly powerful piece of work that has so much to say. And therefore I can't understand how the person with me isn't experiencing the same thing. But the chapter does go into detail about why paintings speak to us on different levels. There are several reasons for it, and the way that she outlines some of these reasons is really insightful, I think, and really worth reading. But she also goes into several other aspects of reading paintings, something called the Gestalt theory, which I wasn't familiar with. This being proximity, similarity, closure, and figure ground. This is how we actually acknowledge and recognise certain aspects of a painting, and how we relate to it and identify certain elements within the picture plane that we find familiar or unfamiliar. It reminds me of certain things which C.W. Mundy said in his episode, which was an incredible episode, so insightful, where he goes through all of the foundational truths, 7 foundational truths, and there's the additional factors that he adds on the end, the alien factor and the face factor. You'll have to watch it. Plus its own highlights. If you aren't aware, there's a highlights channel where I have isolated certain parts and answers from different artists, and on there C.W. Mundy's 7 foundational truths are in there, as well as the 3, I believe, factors that he adds on are also there, isolated in their own clips. So it has a relation to that, I believe, where it's how we look at and engage with a piece of artwork from our first impression to the deeper analysis that can be made. And this book really goes into how different cultures, experiences and environments influence our understanding and experience of artwork. I found it a really interesting book. I really did enjoy it, and I retained a lot of the information immediately. Some books I read and I really enjoy, but I only remember 2 or 3 things from the book. When I reread it, it all becomes more familiar again. But on a first read, it's hard to remember all of it. The book that Gita wrote, I remember a lot of it. It's really flows well. Another part is the artist's toolbox. This is an early chapter. It says, colour is more than a visual tool. It's an emotional language. Understanding how colours interact can help you connect with art in a way that resonates. And this is not only true, but you may be underestimating what that means unless you think about what she's actually saying there. It's not only how colour works so you can appreciate art because it's beautiful colours. That's not really what she's saying. But it's how colours help things communicate certain feelings and connections between characters in the paintings or aspects and elements within the frame. It can really create this harmony in a painting, or it can create vibrations that are difficult and abrasive and therefore have a different effect on you entirely. That's the whole point of certain artists' work, is to make you feel and experience something which is almost a feeling of rejection or repulsion. It's a lot of psychology and a little bit of neuroscience and a lot of experience and thought. Great research. And I'm now going to speak to Gita about the book herself, so she's going to join me on the call here. Hi Gita, how are you doing?
I'm great, thanks so much for having me back on the show.
No, it's a pleasure. Now, I read your book last night and I absolutely loved it. How long have you been working on this book?
So I started actually sitting down to write in about January, and then it took me till about the end of March, and then we published in May. I was really determined for this one that it wasn't going to be years in progress and kind of going back and forth, and adding more stuff in. So I actually it was, in terms of like thinking stage, probably most of last year, I knew there was something else that needed to kind of come through and fill in this gap that I was seeing a lot of the artists I was working with and the artists I was kind of coming across on social media. The thinking stage took a little bit longer than the actual writing stage, and we published in May.
That's amazing. And it looks like you've done a lot of research, because there's a lot of quotes from different people and sources for different aspects of how we process art and how we think about it and engage with it psychologically as well. So did that take a long time? It seems like you did quite a bit of extensive reading from different sources for this.
I did, but this was stuff that I was already familiar with, right, over the years, over the decades, right? This is reading that I've already done. And then a lot of times, if I'm working with an artist or I'm just generally doing book recommendations on my social media and things, there are books and references that I make in the book that I was already recommending to other people, but I kind of wanted to filter it through my own language to make it more accessible. The psychological side, like how the brain processes art, for example. I use in the book an example of like abstract art, right? We, like when we see something figurative, like we recognize usually what it is. But with abstract, it's a little bit different, but the brain kind of goes into a place where it's trying to make some sense of what it's seeing. And that is really something that I wanted to help people understand, because even though a lot of people that I work with are mostly artists, this book was also written to help people that are, let's say they're art enthusiasts before they're collectors, but it's really giving them a vocabulary to unpack what it is they're seeing, understand that, revisiting artwork can enrich that experience. And then from the artist side is like actually having a little bit more self-inquiry as to how, what it is that they're doing, what it is they're trying to say, but also like what is happening here, right? If we're looking at a very abstract composition and it's very painterly, then, there are certain lines and things like that are drawing the eye to help us maybe understand depth or perspective and things like that, even though that was never the intention. Again, it's like about the brain trying to make sense. And then we also talk about how coming to look at an artwork with other information also changes our perception of it. And I think one of the examples I give in the book was around like Van Gogh. Like if you know that his works have broken auction records and things, you approach that artwork in the gallery with much more reverence than you might if you didn't have that knowledge, for example. So now taking it back to the contemporary artist, which is, both of our audiences, we're actually able to, empower that artist to actually do a bit more about, whether it's their own brand and positioning, and how they talk about work, but also lead and guide their, the people that are looking at their art to have more engagement with it, right? Just, through understanding these facets of the personal history that we bring to it, the knowledge we bring to it, the knowledge that can be given from one party, a dealer or a curator, to the viewer, the artist, again, passing that knowledge from their brain, their interpretation to the curator, the dealer, the collector, and so on. So yeah, there's a lot in there. I think, like you said, going back to your actual question, a lot of these things were things I'd already read, and then I kind of just did a little bit deeper research to get more pertinent points and quotes and that research that was already out there. And I think this is just something that I find missing in a lot of self-trained artists, and that is kind of something I wanted to bring in, honestly, to just have better conversations about art.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so true. And I really love the fact that you do go into line and composition and depth and colour, but then also what colour can symbolise and what it can represent in different cultures. I found really interesting, and how our experiences inform how we receive and interpret different artwork. It's all really spoke to me, and I think will be fantastic for everyone to experience. There are so many parts of the book that I thought, I can actually see myself going through this process as I view art. And then other parts I thought, I've not done this, I need to do this. As you say in one part, to stand and describe the artwork, even if you're alone, to describe it so that you have descriptive terms in order to analyze and process what you're actually experiencing looking at a painting or a piece of artwork. I think that's a really great insight into how you can appreciate art on a deeper level. It's really great.
Oh, thank you so much for that feedback. I really appreciate you taking the time to read it and say that. It's we see a lot of people saying that the artwork stands for itself and all these sorts of things, and that's fine. You can do what you want. But my point is that, a lot of people that are interested in art don't come with the vocabulary. And so that is part of what I really wanted to lend to this. And it was really important when I went through the list of, like the symbolism and the metaphors and the color connotations and things like this, that I actually brought in a more global perspective on it, because I certainly was trained through the Western European art tradition. You probably were as well. But I also really wanted to make it clear that, now we have access to so much more art. That's something that has significance in the Western art history tradition, a flower, for example, or some other kind of symbolism can mean something else, from an artist from, I don't know, Ghana or from India or something like that. And I really just wanted to open that up. So in the places where we have lists like that, and same with the color, right? That's a part of it as well. Like, again, through the Western European art tradition, colors like white were typically used to represent the Virgin Mary, and as the church is the biggest patron and so on. But in other cultures, the symbolism of certain colors can be representative of something else, and it's really up to the viewer to inquire about that some more, or for the artist to share more about that. So that was my angle on that.
It's wonderful, and I really struck home when I thought about how I've had the benefit of multicultural friends and with backgrounds that can really feed into my experience and my knowledge. And so when you speak about how different aspects of culture will influence art making, for example, how in Middle Eastern cultures you won't have so much icons and representation, so it goes to patterns and to calligraphy. It's really just opens up and unlocks the beauty of that region and how it can develop these incredible images without having that overlap with other cultural iconographic I don't know if iconographic is a word, icon-based or iconic imagery. So I thought that was really insightful as well. And yeah, it was a really great read. Now there's certain parts that I've written down here because I want people to get a taste of the tone of how you write it as well, which I think is really nice. So, right at the beginning, you put a single visual artwork can hold countless meanings, shifting with each new set of eyes. Things like that it just encapsulates exactly what we've been talking about, how each person will experience it very differently. So there's no one true pathway through the meaning as well, which I think is a great point to make.
Yeah, and we see that as, when we look at older art, or if let's say we look at Victorian art or something like that, we see, different interpretations from its contemporaneous critiques and reviews and things like that, to then how it might have been interpreted in the 30s, and then like now, there's so many. It is pretty evolving, and everybody bringing their own experience to it.
It really is great, and it gives all that texture to everyone's lens into the art world. Again, I've got a couple of things that I wrote down here. For the many ways we interpret art, you've put, this subjective nature creates a rich dialogue between yourself and the work, making art a dynamic, ongoing experience. And after reading things like this, it will stay with me as I go to exhibitions and realize that not only am I viewing and appreciating the work, but any other attendees in an exhibition with me, it will now have that excitement of the difference between how we view it, and probably encourage engagement with other visitors and guests in galleries, museums, or, as you say, cafes, or wherever you find art all around you in different fairs. And art can be in all sorts of places. Another part of the book which I really loved is where you find art. I think it's towards the end as well that you say where you can find art all around you. It's a lovely way to open up the world to people who do want to find and appreciate art.
Yeah, the visual awareness, I think in that at the end, close to the end, where I talk about, like, you're seeing it in graphic design, you're seeing it on a frieze on a building. Like, if you imagine walking through London, we've got a lot of old buildings, and again, there's a lot of rich figurative, like friezes and reliefs and things like that on the walls. So as you kind of develop your visual awareness and your visual sensitivity to these things, you can linger on it a bit more, and just, I think there's an appreciation around it as well.
Yeah.
So it is everywhere. This is not consigned to just within the gallery context, but of course, that is heavily what the book is about.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it wasn't just me. I looked on your Instagram and I could see somebody else had the same reaction that I did, which was to think, I wonder if you're going to do this as an audiobook, because you have a wonderful voice. And as I was reading through it, I was reading it in your voice in my head. Have you considered this at all? Has this crossed your mind?
It is. It is now available as an audiobook, but I actually hired a voice actor for it because I didn't want to do it, and I didn't have the production set up and things. And as I said at the beginning, I wanted this one to just be out in the world. So that would have just took me much longer to do. So it is available as an audiobook, and I hired a wonderful voice actor called Sarah Kempton for that.
Oh, excellent. Well, that's great news, because as much as I enjoyed reading it, I know that there's an audience who will want to hear it as they either work or they travel or whatever it is. So yeah, I highly recommend it. It's not an especially long book as well, so it's really easy to get through and get so much information in such a short period of time. Was there a lot of editing and taking things out, or did you get straight to what you wanted in there and there wasn't much to reduce it down to?
Well, as you can see from the references, right, there's quite a lot there. I think one of the things I realized was when I set out, I wanted it to be a short book. I wanted it to be easy, to be accessible, so that, when like some of the books from my early days, like John Berger's Ways of Seeing or Wolf Lynn and these sorts of things, they're quite heavy. And I wanted this one to be accessible because I feel like I know who my audience is, and they wanted it to be digestible. But it was interesting as I was reviewing the audiobook edition, and that I thought, hang on, I could expand on this. So I think there is a part of me that feels like it's a little bit not unfinished, but there's room for growth. Maybe it's like when you're making a painting, you're thinking, no, actually I need it, whatever my point of inquiry isn't fully resolved, I need to turn it into a series or something. So I feel like, yeah, there's room for expansion on this book, and I probably at some point, I don't really want to put myself under the pressure of doing that immediately, but at some point it'll probably be expanded. Like I said, it's a short book at the moment. I don't know what it is, maybe like 14,000 words, so it might kind of double or so at some point.
Well, that's exciting.
That was on that subject. There was a slight issue with not referencing very specific artworks, which we do reference some, which are very kind of well known and things like that. Like Van Gogh, Chris Ophelia, and things like this. But the whole issue around licensing images for publication and so on. So again, this is why, unlike some of the older writers like Berger and Wolf Lynn and things that I've mentioned, it's not so much a picture book. It's really kind of planting a lot of questions. So the reader, at the point that they are looking at art, whether they're doing it online, go into a gallery or anything like that, they've kind of, they can just have a different experience with some of these questions that the book is really helping them to pose when they're in front of an artwork.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I could imagine walking around an exhibition, hearing this in my head as well on a headset would be really nice. Well, yeah, it's exciting at the prospect of more in the future, because this book really did make me excited and engaged with the art world and what I already see around me. So I'm excited to share that with our audience. It's Framing the Invisible, How We See and Understand Art by Gita Joshi. Thank you so much for coming on and promoting your book. I think it's a fantastic work, and I really recommend everyone check out the links in the description, where we'll have links for where the book is available. But yeah, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much, Simon. Great to see you again.
All right, so that is the bonus show for this month. I'm sorry that Richard didn't join me. However, he will be joining me for the next few bonus shows. I'll make sure to give him plenty of notice. There are loads of great episodes coming up on the podcast. For the public viewers, I'm sure you've already seen the first episode, which will be James Bland. I thank you very much for watching. Leave a like, leave a comment. If you can support us on Patreon, that would be fantastic. If you can review the podcast on the audio platforms, that really helps us get pushed around the algorithm and helps the podcast grow. Otherwise, I appreciate you watching. Keep making art, and I'll see you next time.